What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Modern Warfare, and in today's episode we're moving on to the next shotgun, which is the 725. Now, just like with all of the shotguns, we've got a really interesting damage behavior, and I want to go through this again just in case this is the first shotgun episode that you're watching. But with the shotguns in this game, we have a flat amount of damage per pellet, depending on the range that you are away from your target. And then on top of that, for every 2 pellets that hit your target, we get a damage boost. Also, it's worth noting that for headshot damage with shotguns, it is a negligible boost to your damage, and therefore you never really want to bother aiming for the head. You're better off aiming center mass so you can hit as many pellets as possible on your target. But when it comes to the 725 specifically, our damage profile ranges from 204 up close, assuming every single pellet hits, all the way down to 18 damage at the longest possible range that you can get a hit, assuming only 1 pellet hits. And what this means for regular multiplayer is it's pretty easy to get a one-shot kill up close. You deal way more than enough damage to get that one-shot kill. However, in Warzone, you can only get a one-shot kill on an enemy if they have full health and 2 armor plates. The moment they have that 3rd armor plate, it will require a second shot to kill. As for our rate of fire, this is 343 rounds per minute, and what this means for our time to kill, assuming we need that second shot to kill, this is actually a very competitive time to kill at just 175 milliseconds. So even if you aren't getting that one-shot kill, the 725 is very forgiving for that second shot. Now, getting into our ranges, our base one-shot kill range with the 725 is the best in the shotgun category at about 16 meters, and this is very solid. As for our maximum hit potential though, this is about 28 meters, which again, that's very solid for a shotgun. It is worth noting that it is always possible to get the 2-shot kill as long as you're within the hit potential, but you do have to be making sure that you land as many pellets as possible in order to get that 2-shot kill. As for our suppressors, and I also threw choke on here just because they're all muzzle attachments that impact our ranges, with the lightweight suppressor, all of our range values are reduced by 25%, so you usually want to be avoiding the lightweight suppressor because you don't want to reduce your ranges by that much. Then when it comes to the monolithic suppressor as well as the choke, they both seem to be identical in this area. They both boost our one-shot kill range by only about 5% or so. They don't have a massive impact here. However, for our maximum hit potential, it does increase this range by about 12.5%. So you get a nice boost there, but a hardly noticeable boost to our one-shot kill range. Moving on to hipfire, as you can see here, it's tied with the Model 80 as the best hipfire spread in the shotgun category, which is excellent. Additionally, I want to have a look at the aim down sight behavior. When you aim down sight with this shotgun, you get a very significant decrease to your pellet spread. And therefore, anytime you're beyond those really close quarters situations, you generally want to be aiming down sight to hit as many pellets as possible on target. Speaking of aiming down sight, our aim down sight time with this shotgun is actually very slow at 384 milliseconds. Then when it comes to sprint out time, this is pretty standard for the shotguns at 284 milliseconds for our normal sprint out time, and then our tactical or super sprint out time is going to be 400 milliseconds, which again, that's normal for shotguns and it is very slow. Now, moving on to our capacity, obviously this is a double barrel shotgun, so our capacity is 2 shells, and we have 22 in reserve. Then when it comes to our reload time, if we've just fired 1 shell and we just want to top up, it's going to take 1.32 seconds. However, if we fire both of those shells, it's going to take 1.52 seconds to reload. Now, if we wanted to speed that up, with sleight of hand, we get a 0.9 second top up time if we're just reloading 1 shell, which is very, very fast. And then if we fire both and need to reload both of them, it's going to take you exactly 1 second to reload, which is, again, very fast. As for our movement speed, this is actually quite slow for shotguns at just 92.5%, which is actually the movement speed for a couple of the LMGs, so it is very slow when it comes to this, especially considering a lot of the other shotguns have very solid movement speeds. And when it comes to our aim down sight strafe speed, this is also very slow for the shotguns at 48%, although with this, it's not nearly as slow as the LMGs, for instance. It's still a half-decent aim down sight strafe speed. So that pretty much covers it for the base stats of the 725 shotgun, but now I want to move into a lot of the unique attachments that this gun has, and it has quite a few. First up, let's start it off with the barrels, and the first barrel we have access to is the Tempest Smooth Bore. Now with this, we get slightly improved aim down sight time. It's just 1 frame faster at 60 FPS. And on top of this, we get a wider pellet spread while aiming down sight, which, as you can see here, it's definitely a little bit wider than our standard pellet spread. And even though this is stated as a pro in the attachments, generally speaking, this isn't what you want in core game modes. For hardcore though, I can understand wanting a wider spread because you don't necessarily need to hit very many pellets, you just need to hit 1 pellet up close in many situations. and therefore a wider spread means you have to be less precise with your shot. And with the smoothbore, it looks like we get about a 15% reduction to our one-shot kill potential. However, our maximum hit potential doesn't seem to change at all with this barrel. As for the next barrel, this is the sawed-off barrel, and with this one, we get a really significant reduction to our aim-down sight time. Our new aim-down sight time with this is just 250 milliseconds, which is 8 frames faster at 60 FPS. So it basically turns this into a whole new gun when it comes to handling. And on top of that, we get a huge 5.5% increase to our movement speed. Now these benefits do come with some pretty significant drawbacks. The first one is we get a massive increase to our pellet spread while both hip firing as well as aiming down sight. And just looking at the comparison here while aiming down sight, you can see that your pellets really spread out super far while using this sawed-off barrel. On top of this, we lose some recoil control, which based on my testing, recoil control is basically irrelevant with this gun. Whether you increase or decrease recoil control with attachments, it honestly doesn't seem to make a difference at all, even if you're stacking attachments. However, the worst part of this is our damage range is significantly reduced. Our maximum one-shot kill potential in core game modes is cut down by about a third, so that really sucks. But on top of this, the worst part of it is our maximum hit potential is cut down by about 45%. And this is a big deal because normally I would recommend this for hardcore modes because you get that really wide pellet spread, and therefore you just can't miss as long as the target is somewhat near the center of your screen. However, your maximum hit potential is now so limited since they nerfed this, to the point where it's just not beneficial even in hardcore modes, in my opinion. Now finally for barrels, we have the Tempest 32-inch competition barrel, and with this one we get improved damage range, which with this is a very small boost to our maximum one-hit kill potential in core game modes. This is just about a 5% boost. However, our maximum hit potential is increased by about 15%, which is much more noticeable. On top of this, we get a tighter pellet spread, and you can see here while aiming down sight, definitely a noticeably tighter spread. So even though it doesn't really help with our ranges all that much, it will make it much more consistent at getting those one-shot kills when you're really stretching it out to the maximum one-shot kill potential. As for the downsides though, we've got a huge downside to our aim down sight time. Our new aim down sight speed is 467 milliseconds, which is slower than all of the LMGs in the game, and this is 5 frames slower at 60 FPS. On top of this, our movement speed is reduced by 4%, so this is also slower than most of the LMGs in the game at this point. And as a result, I would say the upsides just don't match up with the downsides with this barrel. You don't get nearly enough of a boost to your one-shot kill potential for this to be worth having a really significantly slower aim down sight speed, as well as movement speed. So that pretty much wraps it up for the barrels, and honestly, I just stay away from the barrels on this gun. I feel like the benefits just generally aren't worth the downsides. But let's move into some of the other attachments. First up, we have the choke, and I already covered the damage range on this. It only increases our one-shot kill potential by about 5%, and this seems to be the cap on the increase to our one-shot kill range, which kind of sucks, especially when you compare it to the Model 680, which has some great range-increasing attachments. On top of this, we do get a great pellet spread while aiming down sight. This is actually the tightest pellet spread you can get while aiming down sight with this shotgun with a single attachment. Although you could combine this with the 32-inch barrel to get a ridiculously tight spread, although again, the downsides of that 32-inch barrel are just generally not worth it. As for the downsides of the choke though, this is just a slight reduction to our aim down sight speed. Our new aim down sight time with this is 400 milliseconds, so it's 1 frame slower at 60 FPS. As a result, I would say the choke is actually a really solid attachment. Very little downside to it, and you get that really nice tight pellet spread, which makes for much more consistent one-shot kills at longer ranges. As for the next attachments I want to cover, these are the laser attachments, and the first one is the 1 milliwatt laser, which helps with our sprint out time. And our standard sprint out time with this is 234 milliseconds, or 3 frames faster at 60 FPS. Then our tactical sprint out time is 4 frames faster at 60 FPS. This is 334 milliseconds. Now, if you want to take that to the next level, we can use the 5 milliwatt laser, and with this, first up, we get a 12.5% reduction to the diameter of our hipfire spread, which is a very noticeable reduction, and therefore you don't need to aim down sight to hit as many pellets in many situations, which is great. And on top of this, our standard sprint out time is significantly reduced all the way down to 184 milliseconds, which is very, very fast. And our tactical sprint out time with this attachment is now faster than our previous base sprint out time at 267 milliseconds. So overall, a great attachment to use. The only downside here is the enemies can see that green laser anytime you're not sprinting or aiming down sight. Now moving on to the last attachment I wanted to cover here with the 725, this is the Tempest Slim Grip. And the reason I wanted to cover this one is it's fairly special. It helps with our aim down sight speed just a little bit. It improves it by 1 frame at 60 FPS, which is not a huge difference, but it is a nice little boost. However, our sprint out times are also improved by a half decent amount. It's basically the same amount as the 1 milliwatt laser, so we get a nice boost there. And this does stack with the laser attachments as well when it comes to sprint out times. The only downside to this is to our aiming stability, which honestly doesn't matter at all unless you're using the slug ammunition. And therefore, I would say this attachment is just great. And with that, that covers it for the basic 725, although I did want to talk briefly about the slugs with this. The 725 is quite unique when it comes to slugs because with the slugs, we actually seem to have an infinite one-shot kill potential in core game modes as long as you're hitting the enemy in the upper torso or the head. For many of the other shotguns, you have to hit the enemy in the head at really long ranges in order to get a one-shot kill, but not with the 725. And the nice thing about this one too is you can pair it with a sniper scope on the 725, and therefore you can actually be decently accurate at really long ranges and kind of pick people off. You just have to account for bullet drop and keep in mind there is a little bit of randomness with your shot. So even when aiming down sight, it doesn't always shoot perfectly straight. Sometimes it will go a little to the left or a little to the right. But out of all of the shotguns when it comes to slugs, I would say this is probably your most viable bet. But finally, I just wanted to share my favorite attachment combinations so far with the 725, assuming I'm not using slugs. I personally don't like using the slugs all that much. I think it is more of like a novelty thing. It's kind of gimmicky. And while you can do it and it can be fun, it's not really competitive in my opinion. However, with these particular attachments I'm going to be sharing here, I feel like this is just the best way to run a balanced 725 shotgun for core game modes. And with this, we've got the monolithic suppressor, so I can stay off the radar while shooting, and this is great if you're flanking your enemies, which you should often be doing with a shotgun. Then we've got that 5 milliwatt laser to help with sprint out time, as well as our hip fire spread, so we don't necessarily have to aim down sight unless we're really stretching that one-shot kill potential as far as possible. Then we've got the sawed-off stock. This one's going to help with our movement speed, and it will also help with our aim down sight speed for those situations where we do need to aim down sight, because when you get beyond, let's just say like 10 meters for instance, you'll probably want to aim down sight in order to still get that one-shot kill potential out to 16 meters. Then I've also got that Tempest Slim Grip on there, which stacks with the 5 milliwatt laser to give us a ridiculous sprint out time. And on top of this, it once again helps with our aim down sight time with basically no noticeable downside. And then finally, this just leaves us with sleight of hand. Even though you reload fairly quickly with this without sleight of hand, I just feel like since you're reloading so often with the 725, you're basically reloading after just about every single fight. So it's not necessarily the magnitude of how much this helps you, it's more so the frequency. This is just helping you so often throughout a game. But with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the 725 shotgun. As for my thoughts on this shotgun, even though this has been nerfed several times since launch and it was ridiculously overpowered at launch in my opinion, I still think this is one of the best shotguns to use. And this is for a few reasons. First up, your base one-shot kill potential is just great without any attachments needed. Then our hipfire spread is excellent, so you don't even necessarily need to aim down sight to get a great one-shot kill potential. And then finally, even if you don't get that one-shot kill, the second shot is ready to go almost instantly. You've got a great fire rate there, and therefore not only is it super powerful when it comes to raw range and damage, it's also forgiving for you, so that second shot is ready for you if you need it. The only real big downside to this is the fact that you only have those 2 shells between each reload, and therefore you can only reasonably deal with 1 to 2 enemies at a time. The moment you have that third enemy attacking at the same time as the other 2, you're basically screwed. There's not a whole lot you can do there, whereas with all of the other shotguns in the game, you might be able to pull through in that situation where there's a third enemy. But of course, that's just my opinion on the 725 shotgun. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think of this gun? Do you think it is really powerful or possibly even the best shotgun in the game? Or do you think it's completely overrated? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.